Amid the misty haze of London, an undercurrent of storm seems to be forming, threatening the long-standing calm within the royal walls. Some suggest that a figure of considerable stature, one we commonly know by the title Duke of Sussex, is embarking on a grueling journey where newspaper headlines are no longer mere information, but arrows aimed straight at the past. Is this a struggle for truth, or a chess match in which the pawns are slowly leaving the board? Recently, those in the know have begun to whisper about unusual signals emerging from the legal machinery accompanying the Duke on this path. Imagine an army advancing forward only for the chief architects of the campaign to suddenly choose to step away from their posts. Is this merely a routine personnel change or a strategic withdrawal after sensing cracks beginning to appear in the defensive wall? Many hypotheses suggest that allegations of gathering information through non-traditional methods targeting media empires are running into unseen resistance. As the light of justice begins to shine into hidden corners, details once thought to be solid now seem more fragile than ever. While one side strives to portray the image of a victim of press manipulation on the opposite front, media giants are painting an entirely different picture. Some currents of public opinion suggest that the line between observer and participant can at times be remarkably thin. Could it be possible that in this game of power and spotlight, every role has already been scripted? Media organizations are putting forward sharp arguments, hinting that the controversial information was not stolen, but may instead have been deliberately planted from sources within. This legal battle is more than just dry lines in court filings. It resembles a modern-day drama about privacy, reputation, and buried secrets. Will the Duke persevere to the very end in search of the light, or will the raging waves from media conglomerates cause all efforts to dissolve into thin air? The answer still lies behind the closed doors of the courtroom. And you, which hypothesis do you believe in? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This battle no longer seems to be a confrontation between an individual and faceless conglomerates. It has become a direct clash among people who once stood within the same social circle. One hypothesis now being raised is this: could the line between a friend and a stalker be blurred by opposing perspectives? Let's analyze the case of a well-known figure in the media world. The Duke's side puts forward allegations of systematic invasions of privacy, yet the opposing side has played an unexpected card, an invitation from the past. Some sources suggest that, rather than lurking in the shadows, this individual was actually present at a private party in 2011, an event whose guest list was reportedly controlled by the homeowner himself. If this is true, it raises a major question. Could today's outrage be unintentionally denying what were once ordinary social interactions? Are we witnessing a kind of memory rupture between people who once smiled at one another? The story grows even more complex as an email from more than a decade ago is brought to light. The Duke's legal team views it as a trace of illegal activity aimed at tracking the whereabouts of a woman closely tied to his past. However, observers offer a different perspective. Could a routine information request by a beat journalist be interpreted as a dark conspiracy? This is the very crux of the controversy, the fine line between professional zeal and an invasion of privacy. What is astonishing here is not the presence of ironclad evidence, but the way it humanizes those being accused. Rather than appearing as ruthless news hunters, they emerge as professionals carrying out their mission within a complex, symbiotic relationship with the royal family. A thorny question is thus posed to the audience. Is this a genuine effort to cleanse the media landscape, or has it inadvertently become a deeply personal manhunt? As the boundary between journalistic practice and misconduct grows increasingly blurred, people begin to wonder, are we looking at a picture magnified by wounds that have yet to heal? We've just analyzed the situation, and now I want to hear your perspective. Do you see this Duke as a brave warrior or someone lost in the consequences of his own choices? If you feel he deserves sympathy, comment 2. If not, comment 5. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming analyses. Now let's continue with the developments unfolding in the courtroom. As those directly involved begin to speak out and present deeply human counterblows, the narrative of victim and perpetrator no longer feels as simple as the headlines suggest. Will these efforts deliver a resounding victory, or will they unintentionally trigger a backlash, forcing the public to reassess the true motives behind it all? We are still standing at the edge of a labyrinth where the truth may belong to neither side, but instead reside in the hazy space in between. It's often said that time is the fairest judge yet. Sometimes it is also the heaviest burden on the shoulders of those trying to change the course of history. In the quiet confines of the courtroom, observers couldn't help but notice signs of fatigue etched across the Duke's face. Could the weight of a legal battle spanning many years be beginning to leave marks that no camera lens can conceal? The most stirring development hasn't been new evidence, but rather the quiet withdrawal of those who once served as his legal backbone. In the world of strategic decision-making, when the architects step away from a project at its most critical phase, it inevitably sparks conflicting speculation. Some believe they may have sensed that the foundations of the arguments were gradually becoming fragile. Could this be more than a legal reshuffle? Perhaps a signal of eroding confidence in a script that no longer feels convincing enough? This lawsuit was once expected to be the cornerstone of a new era in the battle against the media. Yet if that foundation begins to wobble, it leaves behind a significant symbolic void. Instead of a resounding victory, concerns are beginning to surface about a scenario in which personal credibility is placed under the public microscope. If these efforts fail to deliver the hoped-for results, the price may not be measured only in staggering financial costs, but also in growing public doubt about the judgment and resolve of the individual at the center of it all. On the opposite side of the battlefield, figures once cast as the villains are now gradually emerging in a very different light. They are seasoned professionals, people who have endured personal adversity to defend the honor of their craft. Their resistance is not merely a denial, but a challenge to the very way history is being rewritten. It seems the focus of the trial has shifted. It is no longer a story about events from 10 years ago, but a kind of referendum on truth itself and how we choose to remember it. The image of a lone man in a formal suit standing in the middle of the courtroom evokes a deeply reflective feeling. This should have been a moment to assert authority, yet it seems instead to have become a mirror, reflecting the fragility of personal ambition in the face of harsh reality. Is this the end of a journey in pursuit of justice, or merely the beginning of a costly lesson about confronting the truth? Let us wait and see where the light at the end of the tunnel will fall in this high-risk game of chess. In the most critical moments, presence can matter more than any words. Yet amid the legal storm in London, an unusual emptiness has been noticed. Across the ocean, the silence of the Duke's closest companion has become a topic of intense debate. Observers are left wondering, is the distance of thousands of miles merely geographical or something more, a deliberate absence or a signal of a shift in the shared struggle strategy that has long defined the couple's public image? There was a time when the story of us against the world inspired millions. But now the image of the Duke walking alone into the courtroom facing tough questions and the departure of his advisory team evokes a very different feeling. Some observers argue that the lawyer's withdrawal represents not just a technical setback, but a vote of no confidence in the very essence of the lawsuit itself. When those who understand the case best choose to step away, that is when public trust begins to waver. The greatest pain in this courtroom drama may not lie in the allegations themselves, but in the fracture of an identity. The image of a righteous victim is being challenged by memories drawn from the past. As evidence of close social interactions with members of the media is brought forward, a more nuanced picture emerges, that of someone actively participating in the machinery of fame rather than merely being its prey. Being forced to confront a different version of one's former self appears to be a deeply disorienting and emotionally wounding experience. Harry and Meghan have built an empire on personal narratives, from multi-million-dollar documentaries to headline-shaking memoirs. Yet as the most crucial chapter, the chapter of justice, is being written, the solitude of the man at the center tells a very different story. Is this a strategic retreat to preserve what remains of that empire, or is it simply a battle in which each person must face alone the consequences of past choices? Whatever the answer may be, this game of chess has fundamentally changed how we view the struggle between fame, truth, and the price paid for freedom. Observing the courtroom footage closely, one no longer sees the image of a man radiating the unbreakable energy that once shook the media world. Instead, there is a distant gaze, a posture that seems to be bearing the weight of his own choices. It appears that our central figure is caught between two worlds. On one side, the roots he believes have turned their back on him, and on the other, the bright California dream that now seems to be gradually fading. Analysts suggest that this anguish is a symptom of a deep strategic flaw. In the world of books and documentaries, emotions can be guided through one-sided narratives. But in a courtroom where only cold facts exist and sharp cross-examinations reign, every constructed story must face the stress test of evidence. When emotionally charged accounts collide with indisputable data, the pieces of a so-called perfect media strategy begin to fall apart. The absence of the companion, widely regarded as the architect behind the couple's media strategy, carries a message laden with subtext. Could it be that when carefully crafted narratives no longer have a stage before stern judges' presence, itself loses its strategic value? The empty chair beside him is not merely a physical void, it symbolizes a profound shift in alliance. People are beginning to wonder, is this the moment when strategy gives way to reality? Once yearning to be seen as a brave warrior fighting for justice, that image now seems to be shifting into that of a soldier lost on a battlefield without comrades. Alliances that once felt unshakable have faded into the distance, leaving behind a fortress the owner believed to be privacy, only to discover it is an oasis of solitude. This battle may not end with a triumphant roar, but with a profound reckoning over the price of confronting the past. After everything, will what remains be the truth, or merely the shattered fragments of an unfinished dream? There is a stark truth we often overlook beneath the glittering cloaks. Fame is never the same as real power, and publicly exposing personal pain does not always translate into lasting influence. In a London courtroom, we are witnessing a violent collision between media values crafted in studios and the steel rules of justice. When the stage lights go out, only cold evidence remains, and that is where even the most carefully scripted narratives can be torn apart. Let's discuss a textbook lesson that every media professional must take to heart: consistency in messaging. Observers note a bitter irony in the Duke's journey. On one hand, he fights media conglomerates to reclaim the right to live in peace and quiet. On the other, his most private details, his most intimate conversations, are transformed into high-value contracts on streaming platforms. This contradiction creates a black hole of trust. The 21st century public is no longer easily swayed by one-sided declarations. They raise a philosophical question: can an individual ask the world to stop looking at them while simultaneously choosing to shine a spotlight into their own private room in exchange for attention? When this boundary is blurred, the very concept of a victim begins to wobble at its core. One detail that cannot be ignored is the heavy silence from across the ocean. In the world of power, couples' presence is not merely emotional, it is also a powerful political statement. The absence of a spouse during the most critical hours in the courtroom seems to tell a story of strategic withdrawal. Some hypotheses suggest that when the media vessel begins to wobble under legal waves, maintaining distance becomes a way to preserve what remains of the empire. In an alliance built on the slogan, "Us against the world," one person's solitude is the clearest sign of a campaign beginning to fracture. Is this a sacrifice allowing one partner to face the past alone, or a calculated move to avoid the fallout of a defeat that may have been foreseen? This silence at times can be more devastating than any direct criticism. We are living in an era where transparency is paramount. Audiences are no longer satisfied with moral lectures delivered by those who have amassed vast wealth precisely by making their private lives public. Pursuing a legal case driven by personal emotion rather than solid evidence is a systemic mistake. A courtroom is not a storytelling studio. It is a place for cold, hard facts. When advisors, the very architects of justice, choose to step away, it forces us to reassess. Could it be that the story itself contains contradictions that can no longer be reconciled? In the world of mass narratives, the most valuable asset is not money, but empathy. Yet observers are noting a troubling phenomenon. The map of trust the Duke once built appears to be eroding under the weight of his own decisions. When someone spends too much time trying to convince the world of their pain, they may unintentionally push the audience into a state of fatigue. Perhaps the line between a seeker of justice and a figure consumed by resentment is becoming more fragile than ever under the harsh light of reality. The decision of the legal team professionals trained to defend their client under any circumstances to step away is viewed by insiders as a symbolic catastrophe. In professional circles, such a withdrawal often sends a powerful unspoken message. Could it be that even those most fluent in the law have recognized the growing impossibility of defending arguments that are drifting further and further from reality? Stubbornness, when placed within a humanitarian mission, can be seen as steadfastness. But when embedded in a legal battle riddled with contradictions, it begins to resemble an obstacle. The message the public receives is no longer, "I am fighting for the truth," but rather, "I am trapped within my own preconceptions." We cannot deny that tabloid media has its dark sides, moments of cruelty and extreme invasions of privacy. However, the greatest lesson here lies in how we choose to respond to that darkness. Instead of changing the system or winning the public's heart through genuinely humane actions, the current efforts seem only to generate an endless loop of controversy. A painful question emerges. Why would someone with ample resources to change the world through philanthropy choose instead to spend the prime years of their life in suffocating courtrooms? Is defeating a newspaper truly more important than the peace of one's own family? What feels most regrettable to those who once supported the Sussexes is the waste of potential. Harry could have chosen a different path, a path of quiet, yet powerful dignity. A life of silent dedication to noble causes. The image of a devoted father and husband living peacefully in the calm of California. Instead of choosing happiness as the sweetest possible rebuttal to his critics, he chose to plunge into a war of attrition. In this battle, whether he wins or loses in legal terms, he seems to have already lost the fight to fully regain public respect. Aggressiveness can sometimes blur the original noble intentions, leaving behind the image of a man lost in a maze of his own making. This becomes a lesson in how we confront wounds from the past. Do we spend a lifetime demanding a form of justice that may never be complete, or do we choose to let go in order to build a brighter future? The image of the Duke seated in the middle of the courtroom facing the empty chairs of former allies is the sharpest reminder of the loneliness that comes from choosing to fight with resentment rather than with love and creation. And perhaps the greatest failure is not losing a lawsuit, but losing oneself in the pursuit of validation from those who were never inclined to love you in the first place. Every choice in life comes with a price, and sometimes the highest cost is not money or fame, but peace of mind. Observers suggest that we are witnessing a cautionary tale about the fragile line between the pursuit of justice and an obsession with the past. When someone is unable to let go of old wounds, they may unwittingly turn themselves into a prisoner of a battle in which even victory can no longer bring true serenity. There is a bitter truth that Hollywood spotlights and royal opulence sometimes obscure fame, and wealth have never been guaranteed tickets to happiness. People are beginning to wonder whether the best response to media adversity might be to step back and choose a form of powerful silence as a way to heal. Yet in this case, the Duke appears to be caught in an inescapable vortex. The desire to prove his own righteousness before the entire world seems to have transformed into a kind of self-depleting energy. When efforts to protect oneself become instruments of self-destruction, it is hard not to feel a sense of regret for a symbol that was once deeply loved. In crowd psychology, empathy is a finite resource. When stories of being wronged are repeated too many times without corresponding acts of positive creation, public sentiment tends to shift from understanding to skepticism. Some currents of opinion state bluntly that it is difficult to sustain compassion for someone who appears to be constructing his own maze and then complaining about being unable to find a way out. The collapse of the righteous victim image in the eyes of the public may well be the heaviest defeat of all, far surpassing any courtroom verdict. Imagine the scene inside a historic wood-paneled courtroom in London, a space that embodies tradition, the rule of law, and cold, uncompromising truth. There, under the scrutiny of millions, one individual is forced to confront the consequences of his own decisions. That solitude is not merely the absence of allies or legal counsel, but the loneliness of someone realizing that the carefully constructed script he relied on is slowly unraveling in the face of harsh reality. This is not merely a legal or media failure. It appears to be a collapse of identity itself. Being trapped in self-created contradictions, wanting freedom while endlessly excavating the past, has produced a profound state of disorientation. We end this story not with a satisfying answer, but with a reflection on choice. Will this become the final point of awakening the moment one begins a true journey of healing? Or is it simply the start of yet another long cycle of resentment? The media storm will eventually pass. Headlines will grow old, but the legacy a person leaves behind is measured by what they build, not by what they try to tear down. Hopefully, after these turbulent days in London, each of us can find a personal lesson in the power of smiling and moving forward rather than constantly looking back and losing the future in the process. The journey of decoding the mysteries surrounding the Duke and his confrontation with the media has taken us through many layers of truth, emotion, and strategic calculation. Yet in a world of hypotheses, the boundary between right and wrong is sometimes nothing more than a veil of mist. This is for reference only based on unverified hypotheses, rumors, and public opinion. Let's discuss this topic from an objective, analytical perspective. Don't just stay on the sidelines. Join me as we dive deeper into this conversation. Press 1 if you feel these mysteries still hold strong appeal and you want to keep exploring. Press 0 if you choose a cool, skeptical mindset toward media-driven narratives. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss our next decoding journeys, where we'll continue peeling back the secrets hidden behind the brightest spotlights. Thank you for joining me, and see you again in the next round of hypotheses.